Well, good morning and welcome. The topic of this discussion is the value of gender equity. Can anyone give me an idea what your views are on this and why you think it's relevant to the workplace for there to be gender equity?
Equal pay.
Equal pay is part of it, absolutely. There's a lot that goes into it, but we'll get into that later actually if we're going to move forward. Just from a financial perspective, companies that show that they have gender equity are more profitable than those that are not. There was a study done by the McKinsey Group. They monitored over 1,000 different companies over 12 different countries and found that those companies and corporations that had gender equity actually performed 15% or greater above median for other industries in the same field. That increased in 2017 to 21%. So there is a financial gain for companies to be inclusive of everyone. What they also found, and I didn't include this in this, but those corporations who had chiefs that were not just staff chiefs like HR or accounting and client experiences that are internal, but line chiefs, those positions that actually drive revenue, performed at the very top of all of these criteria. These are some basic stats, but I'll pull back on them a little bit later. There are 74.6 million women in the civilian labor force. This doesn't include government or the military service. 47% of full-time employees are women, so we're fairly even across the gender. 39% of women tend to work in female-centric companies or industries. So that would be education, healthcare, service industries the way we have here. Women are much better represented within these fields than in other companies. We have 10 million businesses that are women-owned within the US. That works out to be about 38%. And females who serve tend to continue to serve. It becomes a lifestyle for women. So if they work in they've served within the military, they tend to come out and continue to serve. Changes that we've seen, working moms are actually now the norm. Some of these statistics actually were surprising for me. 70% of mothers with children under 18 participate in the workforce, and 75% of those are full-time employed. And this is a little bit even more shocking. In 40% of households that have children under 18, the mothers are actually the primary earners within that demographic. It's a lot of a change from 1960 when only 11% were the primary earners. Okay, this number, 1964, 59.1%. Does anyone have any idea what number this represents? No, but you're close. The real number for women in the workforce is actually not far off that in 1964, but no. This actually represents pennies on the dollar, what women earned compared to their male counterparts in 1964. And understand this actually is a year after the Equal Pay Act of 1963. So a year after the government made it illegal for one company to pay a female staff member less than her male counterparts, this is where we were. In 2003, we progressed up to 80% or 80 cents on the dollar, so we had a fairly steady increase. In 2008, we actually hit our all-time high of 82%. Does anyone know what else happened in 2008 that affected this? Yes, we did. We had a financial crisis. We went into recession. And what that meant was, unfortunately, a lot of higher paying positions were eliminated. And for a short time...
Okay, got it, thanks.
Can you mute for me, please? It actually swung the pendulum a little bit in our favor. Women, unfortunately, tended to occupy lower paying positions and were less likely to be made redundant through the recession. Swung back the other way in 2014. And this is where we are. This is the most recent data I could get out of the Bureau of Statistics. So we're at 80.1% or 80.1 cents on the dollar for our male counterparts. There's a lot of progress in other areas that we have made, so it's not all terrible news. This demographic is looking at men and women age 25 or older who are in full-time employ within the US. Of that demographic, 14.1% had completed higher education in 1975 as women, and 20.2% for men in that year. Fast forward to 2015, and the numbers look very different. In 2015, 40.7% are women, and 36.4% are men. Which strange is this, is though we make a lot of progress here, it's not having the impact that we would hope to see. I have added the statistic that I pulled for 2017, 50% of all graduates of that year were female, but less than 22% will ever rise above middle management. Part of what happens is occupational segregation. This is a huge impact, as I said earlier. 40% of working women all work in female-centric careers that tend to not pay quite as well. And they tend to occupy lower positions. Unlike the service industries where we work, women don't tend to rise as high. Less than 1 in 3 executive positions in the US are held by women, and this is greatly skewed. Understand that if I, as a woman, want to open a daycare within my home, I have to register as an LLC, and bang, I'm a chief. And that number is included within this. If you look at non-service industries, non-healthcare, non-education, non-female-centric careers, as an example, software developers, less than 1 in 6 are women within that field. And so we're on the same page, software developers make a whole lot more money than teachers do. And before I move on to the next slide, this number looks a whole lot different when you start looking at Fortune 500 companies. And I have that data. Does anyone care to make a guess on how many women occupy a chief position in a Fortune 500 company? Nobody even wants to guess.
5%? Less than 20.
1 in 15.
I'd say 1 in 100.
1 in 100's not even close.
Wow.
There they are. 24.
Wow. What?
24 women chiefs of every Fortune 500 company. I did the research and pulled them specifically. I thought I was going to be able to pull a percentage, and it was so low that I listed them individually. The other thing that you're going to notice when you look at this list, Oracle is not listed twice. Ross is not listed twice. Hershey is not listed twice. So all of the Fortune 500 companies that actually have an inclusiveness of a female chief of staff, none of them have more than 1. Unpaid work has a huge impact on that career advancement path. I wasn't aware of this, but as I dug into it, the numbers become a little bit more apparent. 60 to 80% of all unpaid work is carried out by women. That is childcare, elder care, illness, injury. I'm sure we all know someone or have been someone who has had to adjust their life to care for someone else at some point. And despite every study showing that there is no impact on the carry, on that child or sick person or an elder, whether they're being cared for by a man or they're being cared for by a woman, it's still being done by women. What that means is during your lifetime, if you're the carer, your career is being impacted in subtle ways. I can't stay late because I have to go and pick up my child. I can't come in and work over the weekend because I have to care for my mother. I need to take some time off because I need to take my father to a doctor's appointment. All of these things start to impact your career. You are not going to have the freedom to travel for work. You're not going to be able to have those stretch assignments that are going to require long hours. And because of those things, you're far less likely to be considered for those big promotions if you're not going to be able to commit to these additional things. So this is an impactor that I would like to see in my lifetime changed. If this number were 50-50 and men and women were caregivers in equal numbers, caring for someone would not be something that hindered your career. It would just be a part of life. It would be something that people do because in life you have to care for someone from time to time. Other ways to change the gender gap. Be aware that it exists. It's interesting the amount of studies that I have looked through where both men and women will say, no, women are equally represented in my company. Women get an equal opportunity. Women are equally heard, when you actually start digging into the statistics, and it's not actually true. So knowing that it exists gives you an opportunity to change it. Look across your team. Is everyone within your group being heard? Are they being represented? If you're having a meeting, is everyone given a chance to speak or voice an opinion, or do they feel comfortable bringing up an idea that they have? Give them that chance to shine. Fight against interruptions, and I've seen this, and I think everyone else has. You'll see someone in a group meeting or in a conversation who you can see clearly is struggling to be heard. They have an idea, they want their voice to be heard, but they're being spoken over, that the conversation is happening around them and is not including them. Fight against that. If you see it, stop. Say, Tom, you look like you have something to say. Please join in and say it. What you have to say is important and it has value. It helps them to know that they can speak up if there are people who are rooting for them. Amplify your colleagues' voices. So Michelle has a great idea, and we have it in a casual conversation. When I have an opportunity, I'm going to bring it up. I'm not just going to bring up that the idea was had in a conversation. It's Michelle's idea. I want her name to be attached to that idea because she should be getting credit, because it was something that she came up with and it can benefit other people. Let women be part of their own decision making. Again, so we have a new position that's opening up within the company, but this position requires a lot of travel. I have been personally in situations where I've heard people say, well, I would love to have Jen take that position, but she has a young child at home who has special needs, so she's not going to be able to do it. So now I'm not even considered for that position. You may be right. I may not be able to take the job, but I should be part of the conversation. I should have a say in my own future and my own destiny. Allow me to be part of that conversation. Everyone deserves that. Number 6, emotion is not weakness. Everyone expresses emotion differently. I have been in situations where people become very angry and their voices are raised and they're starting to shout. And I have been in situations where people become very quiet, or they get overwhelmed with frustration and they start to cry. There's no shame in that. You're entitled to the emotions you have. If you're in a situation where someone is becoming upset, allow them to have the moment and then offer them feedback. And still validate what they had to say. What they have to say may be incredibly intrinsic to what you need. Because they happen to have been frustrated at that moment does not mean that you should discount everything that they have to offer. Respect them, offer respect. It's simple, but I think it gets overlooked and it bears repeating. Now, where do you fit into the big picture within your organization? A good practice is to outline what you do and who you are here, and not just, I'm a CX team lead and I work on cases. No, what do I do? I problem solve all day long. I work with my peers, I organize groups, I redo process to make things streamlined. These are my skill sets. Write them down, understand where your strengths are, and then see if they align with where your actual careers want to go. Maybe a career in sales is something that's calling to you. If that's what you want, then pursue it. Don't think that just because this is where you are and this is what you do, that this is the only thing that you can do. You could be like me. I've hit 40 now, and I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Some of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life have not had any idea what they want to do when they grow up. But find out, or at least try to. One of the ways to do that is informational interviews. Take some time to ask people around you. And it doesn't have to be just at work. Ask family members, friends, spouses of friends. If they have a career that you think might be interesting, ask if you can take 20 minutes with them. What do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? What hurdles did you have to overcome? What did your career path look like? Trust me, everybody likes talking about themselves. I've never met anyone that I wanted to ask questions about their job that went, no, I don't have time for that. Another good resource is mentorships. Here at LSA, we have Project Chain, which is a way to help groom internal staff for management. I know that IBT has Project Sprout, which also does a similar thing where you try to groom talent within the company to move up. But even if you happen to end up in a company that doesn't have that, it doesn't mean that mentorship isn't available. You can look for that elsewhere, and you can look for it on your own within your own company. If there's someone that you aspire to be like, or if there's someone that you respect their opinion and you realize that they have something to share with you, go to them, talk to them. This is what I'm going through. These are the hurdles that I'm facing. This is a situation that I was in that really upset me. I'm not sure if I took it the right way. Use them as a sounding board and as a resource. Another top tip that we gleaned is get more than one. See if you can find a male and a female. Men and women have very different career tracks, very different career paths, and therefore different perspectives on how to resolve issues. Speak to both of them. Use both resources to help yourself. The other thing that's great with mentorship is if you are making those connections within your own corporation, it's someone else who can speak for you. Someone else that you've made a connection that understands your value, that understands that you have information and knowledge to share. They can speak for you when you're not present. Create positive change. I have passed out an impact plan worksheet, and you can take it away with you, you can keep it. What this says is if you could do anything at all, if you had total autonomy, you didn't have to go to HR, you didn't have to go to your boss, you didn't have to go to anyone. What one change would you make to your job right now? And look at it, write it down. It's very powerful to write something down. It allows you to see it in a different way. Is what you're asking for reasonable? I made the example that if you're asking to be paid in gold doubloons, you're probably not going to get it. But if you're saying, hey, we're really overworked in our department, and if someone's out on vacation, it's even harder. I would love to create a new position within my team. The lion's share of our work is client education. Maybe I can create a position that handles just client education. They can focus on that. It would free up workload, and it would make the work process flow easier. I may not get that. It may not be something that's within the company's power to give me right now, but it's a reasonable request, and it's something that as a goal that I can work towards. Forging your path forward, pushing yourself. Leadership is the number one. Showing that you can be a good leader is the best way to get yourself noticed and therefore in alignment to be promoted. You don't need the title to be a good leader. You can do that anywhere at any time. Lead by example. My work is always done above par. I show up on time. I don't take long lunches. If my peers need help, if the person sitting next to me, if I see them struggling, I don't wait for them to ask me if they need help. I'm going to reach out to them. You look like you're having a hard time. Tell me what's going on. Let me see how we can work through it together. It's being a good leader at any time. Be generous. Give credit where credit is due. Again, if you're in that meeting, make sure that the people who are around you have equal time to speak and to give their opinions. Everyone's opinion is valid. Be generous with it. Be flexible. Again, what you want today may not be reasonable at this moment. Be flexible with it. Maybe I can't have that new hire, but maybe I can have someone who's shared, or we can change how we have workflow into us. Maybe there's some work that can be shared with other teams as backup, so we can be flexible with what we need and still achieve the same goal. Understand that everybody fails. It happens. You had a great idea. You thought it was wonderful. You talked to the higher ups and they implemented what you wanted and it didn't work, or it didn't achieve what you thought it was going to. Don't get stuck in this moment that you failed and therefore you shouldn't try again. Don't be afraid. It happens, learn from it and go on. And persist. So I have this idea, I want this new position. I'm told no. I still think it's a good idea. Next month, I still think it's a good idea. 6 months from now, I still think it's a good idea. And I'm going to continue to push for it. I will be persistent. Because just because it's no today doesn't mean it's going to be no 6 months from now. The last slide is gaining information and skill sets. Everybody knows that going to college or getting a certificate or a certification is a wonderful way to advance your own career, to be educated and use that to advance yourself. But it's not the only way. You can do job shadowing. Take the time to work with other teams to gain that knowledge or that skill set. Reach out to the managers, your own manager, managers of other departments. I guarantee that we'll be able to make that happen for you. Volunteer. A lot of volunteer groups will actually offer training for those people who are willing to volunteer their time once they gain that expertise. Use that as a resource if you're able to do so. And then you can also join organizations like Toastmasters or Rotary. They have weekly, if not monthly, seminars where people will come in and share their expertise and knowledge to anyone who's willing to listen. Take advantage of that. It's also a very good place to find mentorship. Okay, and do we have any questions? Anything for me?
You're awesome.
Well, thank you for coming.